Emmanuel Levinas, a Lithuanian philosopher and naturalized French citizen, was one of the great contributors to ethics in the 20th century. Leveenoss's approach to ethics is different from those of other philosophers. He does not try to establish rational principles, nor does he look at pain and pleasure to determine what is right or wrong. Instead, he investigates the face-to-face encounter with the other person. In this encounter, I find my responsibility to the other person, which is immediate, coming before the formulation of any moral imperatives or principles. My responsibility to the other person is more important than any search for knowledge or understanding of being. Ethics is revealed as the first philosophy. This video serves as a basic introduction to Levinas' difficult and influential philosophy by looking at a few of his key ideas. Levinas' philosophy investigates the significance of the other. But what does he mean by the other? The term is sometimes written with a capital O and means another human being who transcends one's own powers of apprehension. When the self tries to understand the other person, his powers are thwarted because the other person is always more than any object one encounters in the world. The other, in all its uniqueness, is unlike any phenomenon and cannot be assimilated. Leveenoss describes the experience this way: the strangeness of the other, his irreducibility to the I, to my thoughts and my possessions, is precisely accomplished as a calling into question of my spontaneity as ethics. In respecting the uniqueness of the other, Leveenoss rejects thinking about any common ground we ourselves may share with the other person. He says, the same and the other at the same time maintain themselves in a relationship, remain absolutely separated. He is also opposed to thinking about a specific quality that makes the other different from me. This would just be another way of capturing the other in categories and classifications. He remarks, the alterity of the other does not depend on any quality that would distinguish him from me, for a distinction of that nature would precisely imply between us that community of Janus which already nullifies alterity. Importantly, Leveenoss also speaks about the other person as one in need and for whom I am responsible. At times, he describes the other using terms such as nakedness and vulnerability, and even employs biblical language by saying the other is the stranger, the widow, and the orphan to whom I am obligated. Ethics, therefore, begins in a face-to-face encounter with the other, who is unique, vulnerable, and for whom responsibility has to be taken. Written in French and published in 1961, Totality and Infinity is one of Levinas' most studied works. Totality refers to Levinas' central criticism of Western philosophy, the tendency to understand everything. While this disposition is important for scientific investigation, Leveenoss finds it unethical when applied to the other person and claims that Western philosophy has mistakenly taken its relation with the other person as one of subject and object. The self tries to capture the other in its existing conceptual schemes and desires to make it a product of its own thought and put it under its control. Accordingly, Leveenoss thinks that the self's knowledge of the other must always remain inadequate in order not to violate the other person's differences. The other must remain other, unrelated to and not reduced to the self's system of thought. Totality refers to this reduction of the other person to the self. The second term in the title of the book is infinity, and this points to how the other person is beyond my conceptual horizons, categories, and systems. The infinity of the other person opens up to us in what Leveenoss calls the face. Leveenoss states, the face resists possession, resists my powers, and even though the term face can be misleadingly taken as only a physical face, it means more than that. Leveenoss points out that the face is not the mere assemblage of a nose, a forehead, eyes, etc. It is all that, of course, but takes on the meaning of a face through the new dimension it opens up in the perception of being. The other's face expresses, "Thou shalt not kill," and in the face, Leveenoss remarks that, "I hear the word of God. I am unable to bring the other under my control and am held responsible." Interestingly, the face speaks to me from on high, such that the self is both commanded and desperately asked for help. Throughout the history of philosophy and the social sciences, we see relationships based on theories of reciprocity. Individuals are expected to meet each other halfway in a give and take manner, each benefiting the other. However, in the face-to-face encounter, the self becomes infinitely obligated to the other. I put the other before me, as Leveenoss writes that the ethical relation forbids the murderousness of my natural will to put my own existence first, thereby making the self immediately responsible before any formulation of moral principles. Leveenoss says, "I understand responsibility as responsibility for the other, and this pre-theoretical responsibility is direct and cannot even be captured in moral doctrines." He also writes that there is an order issued to me not to abandon the other, a call to responsibility which provides a condition to exercise my free will and make me a self. Responsibility to the other is my ultimate duty, making ethics the first philosophy. Leveenoss's ethical view on responsibility has inspired many, but it has also raised questions. What happens when multiple other persons are involved? To whom is the self then responsible? Leveenoss thinks that reason and other ways of dispensing justice can be called upon to resolve these situations. Leveenoss's ethics is about the significance of the other person, who transcends my powers of thought. He criticizes Western philosophy for its attempts to apprehend the other person and relate the other to the self. Leveenoss speaks of infinity, a moment of transcendence which is revealed in the other's face. In the face-to-face encounter, the self finds that it is responsible for the other person, and these obligations are asymmetrical. One's responsibility to the other precedes any formulation of moral principles and is one's most important duty.